Oh.
The brain is the center of function and intellect that connects all of the pathways in our body. The nervous system is broken down into the central and peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system contains the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system contains everything off the spinal cord not encased in bone, including spinal and cranial nerves. In the nervous system, there are neurons that contain cell bodies, axons, and dendrites. These axons generate action potentials, which is a momentary change in electrical potential on the surface of a cell, especially of a nerve or muscle cell, that occurs when it is stimulated, resulting in the transmission of an electrical impulse when reached by a threshold throughout our whole entire body. The sensory system works together as a triad of sensory processing, containing the visual, vestibular, and proprioception. The visual system is the most dominant sensory system. Light enters your eye through the retina, going down a pathway. Once it leaves the retina, it goes to the optic chiasm, then to the optic tract, which goes into the lateral geniculate nucleus, and to the thalamus, and to the primary visual cortex. If the optic nerve on the left side is cut, vision will be lost completely in the left eye. The right eye will see portions of the left visual field. If the optic tract on the left side is cut, vision will be lost in the right visual field of each eye. The retina contains photoreceptors, which are called rods and cones. The rods are stimulated in dim light and are 1,000 times more sensitive than cones, and can be completely inhibited in bright light. Cones are for fine visual acuity, and they allow you to be able to see color. There are divergent pathways in the visual system. The dorsal stream, which travels through the posterior parietal cortex and creates internal sensory maps used to orient body in space and visual attention. It goes to the V1, to the V2, V3, to the MT or V5, then to the parietal lobe, to prefrontal association area. The southern root or ventral stream travels through the temporal circuits process for visual object recognition, visual perception, and visual memory, and face recognition. Travel through the V1, the V2, V3, V4, to the temporal lobe, to the IT area, and the prefrontal association areas. The vestibular system closely related to vision and helps with posture, eye movement, and spatial orientation. The ear is made of otolith organs called utricle and saccule. The two chambers work in pair inside the macula, which contain thousands of hair cells, projected cilia, up to the gelatinous endolymph called otoconia, which are tiny carbonate crystals that provide internal influence the system needs to provide meaning to movement in space. When the head moves, the crystals hit hair cells. The hair cells are made up of stereocilia and kinocilia. When the stereocilia moves towards the kinocilia, it depolarizes, and when it moves away, it hyperpolarizes. Hair cells are arranged in different directions, so different hair cells can be stimulated. Macula utricle is like riding in a car going horizontal, and the macula saccule is like riding in an elevator going vertical. The VOR, or vestoocular reflex, stabilizes gaze in space, which the head is in motion or looking at objects in motion. Prevents loss of visual acuity while moving. When the head moves 10 degrees to the right, the VOR rotates the eyes 10 degrees to the left. Proprioception is where the body is in space. Somatomotor sensory has specific receptors called mechanoreceptors and nociceptors. Mechanoreceptors are touch receptors that have specific types that detect fine touch discrimination and vibration in the skin. Mechanoreceptors travel down a path in the spinal cord called the DCML. which travels ipsilaterally up the spinal cord through the dorsal horn to the medulla, to the thalamus, and to the cortex. It is the largest somatosensory pathway and functions to interpret the world, which carries touch, vibration, proprioception, and kinesthesia. The large myelinated fibers, which means that it is the fastest traveling pathway because it has A alpha and A beta fibers traveling on it. Nociceptors travel in a much different pathway called the spinothalamic pathway, which carries pain sensation. All are non-adapting, meaning that they cannot adapt in painful stimulus. Fiber synapse in the dorsal horn and cross immediately, which makes it a contralateral pathway. The spinothalamic pathway carries a delta or C fiber, which means it is not myelinated or have very little myelin, meaning it is slower. Muscle spindles are a stretch receptor that send information about muscle length and rate of change in muscle length. They work as a yin-yang with Golgi tendon organs, which transmit information about tension and rate of tension in a muscle to have a reflex and contract the muscle. The Golgi tendon organ inhibits the motor neuron of the same muscle while facilitating the antagonist muscle, while the muscle spindles facilitate the motor neuron while inhibiting the antagonist muscle. The control of voluntary movement can be explained by ready, set, go. The ready is prefrontal association area, and posterior parietal is gathered all sensory and perceptive information, which is part of a visual input. The set is area 6, the primary motor area, and the supplementary motor area, which finds the correct motor plan to go. And the go, which is the cerebral, is the cortex M1 sends out the motor plan. All of this is possible because of basal ganglia and the cerebellum. The basal ganglia is involved in a complex motor loop that connects them all to various areas of the cortex. It acts as a filter, blocking the execution of movements that are not necessary for the situation. Problems in this area can cause Parkinson's, which starts as a resting tremor and progressively gets worse. The cerebellum is the silent engineer, which helps with sequencing motor activities. Damage could cause intention tremors or ataxia. The cerebellum aids the cortex in planning the next sequential movement a fraction of a second in advance while present movement is being executed. The limbic system brings it all together and makes up who we are as humans. It is our behavior, feelings, and emotion. It integrates total input into the central nervous system and provides us with intentional drive of behaviors. Also plays a role in motor expression. The limbic system moves us. M stands for memory and motivation, our desire to learn. O stands for olfaction, which is the only thing that passes up the thalamus and goes directly to the limbic system, i.e. why you can smell something and it brings on a strong memory. V is visceral, drives thirst and hunger. It's the peripheral autonomic nervous system response. E is for emotion, feeling, and attitude. The FTARV is fear, which often develops into anger, dysfunction, or damage of the system, causes imbalances in chemistry and or wiring. One's ability to control this continuum may change after a central nervous system damage. That's why if you have a patient that is really angry, the best thing to do is to counteract their nervous system by acting the opposite way. The major structure of the limbic system is the hypothalamus, which is less than 1% of brain mass, but is vital to overall function of the entire limbic system. So if there's a dysfunction in that system, the entire system is messed up. As you can see, neurooccupation all comes together to make up who we are. It fires pathways to and from the brain to everywhere in the body so that we can function. One tiny glitch could bring the whole system down like a domino effect. As therapists, it is important to know and understand these pathways so we can give our patients the right treatment so they can recover.